Wonderful. Welcome, everybody. We're here for a very exciting event. This is what's called a book launch, and we have Joan Kop with us today. This is the first official book launch that the Guild has ever done, and I'm just thrilled. And she's really one of the easiest people I've ever worked with on anything. She's a very organized person, so I'm happy that we're doing this. Joan has been writing professionally since about the late 80s, and she's already has published in the past something I keep trying to make into a biography, but it isn't. It's historical fiction. She assures me that. And she's also done a memoir of part of her own life. So she's switched now. She's gone to this fiction thing too. It's kind of a thriller, I think. At least that's what she calls it. And yeah, I would call it that too. It's pretty pensive. And the genre is called thriller. And the title of the book is The Spy from Beijing. Is that correct, Joan? Yeah. Okay. Well, you've been waiting to listen to her instead of me for quite a while, and I'm just gonna pass the mic on to Joan and ask, where would you like to? Oh, she started already. She's holding up her book. Yep. So where would you like to start, Joan? Go ahead.
Yeah, well, first of all, I'd like to thank you all for showing up for this book launch. It really honestly means the world to me. I think people always remember who shows up at your book launches. I know I do mine. That was in 2010 for my first book launch. And secondly, I would like to thank Linda for putting on this event. Linda is the head of the Inland Northwest Writers Guild and is grossly underpaid for what she does. And her selfless giving helps other writers become successful. And for that, I'm eternally grateful to you, Linda. Thank you. And I want to mention, first of all, please hold your questions till the end of my presentation. So it kind of gets me off my spiel. And I kind of wrote things out. So, I tend to be more organized than talking off the top of my head when I write things out. And first of all, I'd like to read you the description of my book, and then I'll tell you what inspired me to write it. Here goes. In a world where loyalty is tested, Jenny, a Chinese-American FBI agent, uncovers a chilling plot. Her Beijing counterpart, Yi Chen, is a double agent, blackmailing and poisoning to steal critical DNA for China's dominance. But when Jenny discovers she's Yi Chen's biological twin, everything changes. Torn between family ties and duty to her country, she must navigate a treacherous game of espionage that spans Seattle to Beijing. Can she protect her nation while confronting the shocking truth of her past? Dive into The Spy from Beijing, where trust is fleeting and betrayal lurks at every turn. And then I want to read a endorsement from Robert Dugoni. A lot of people here know who Robert Dugoni is. He's a lawyer turned novelist in Seattle. He's very prolific author, and he has written some spy novels. And this is what he wrote about mine, which captures the theme of my book perfectly. Based on the world's obsession with DNA testing, Joan M. Kop crafts a thrilling spy tale about China's attempt to steal Americans' personal data and combines it with China's other nefarious spy practices. Kop keeps you on the edge of your seat as she ratchets up the tension and provides several wild twists in this thought-provoking story about what is more important, family or patriotism. And his two books that he's most famous for are My Sister's Grave and The Extraordinary Life of Sam Hell. Some of you might have read some of that. Now I want to tell you where my idea for my book came from. A cousin of mine recommended that I read The Great Earth by Pearl S. Buck. And I absolutely love that book. And I would have liked to have written a book like that. But once I started researching, I knew my book would be different. And two things influenced my plot. A sister-in-law at age 30 found out through a DNA test that she had been adopted. I did research on DNA tests myself by going through the process myself. And my friend Dave Kamakaris, who's also a character in the book, also did a DNA test. And the other thing that influenced my plot that was that two cousins of mine both adopted Chinese babies who had been abandoned at birth. So I decided to combine both of these things into my plot, and that's where my idea started. The other thing was back in the pandemic, the early onset of the pandemic, Governor Jay Inslee nixed the Chinese were trying to get DNA testing from COVID tests, and he nixed the idea. So that was another thing that kind of how my idea cemented. And another thing that I'd like to mention is how much effort I went to make the details correct in my book. Like I mentioned, I wrote this book during the pandemic when travel to China was impossible, almost non-existent because the country was shut down because of the pandemic. And I relied on research from internet sources a lot and also got information from people who live there. I was able to get a map of the subway in Beijing and Googled for one in Shenzhen. But the tricky part is that China knows everything about you from the day you step off the plane. And they have hacked the database of the Office of Personnel Management and can find out if you've ever applied for a government job, even people who have applied for intelligence careers. And Beijing is also full of cameras on street corners, in the subway, etc. And so I had my characters wear disguises. And another example of the research I did was that I Googled TripAdvisor to view the inside of a restaurant that I wanted to describe in my book. So I found different restaurants that I could Google and find out what they look like so I could offer a description in my book. And I found a photo and description of the American Embassy in Beijing, but I couldn't tell from the photo whether it had a reflecting pool surrounding the embassy or if the photo just depicted a reflection from the glass windows. And this is how I describe the U.S. Embassy in Beijing in my novel. Situated on 10 acres, the embassy consisted of 6 separate modern buildings, including an 8-story main chancery, a 3-story atrium office building, and a consular building, which are protected by a perimeter wall. However, the wall in front of the consular section has thick, blast-proof, transparent glass, allowing a view inside the compound. The main building was covered from ground to rooftop in square lattice windows. 4 evenly spaced poles jutted out at the front entrance, and the embassy seal in English and Chinese was prominently displayed to the right on the stone wall. Yichen couldn't see the full city skyline because of the smog, but he could hear water quietly rippling in the pool near the embassy. So that last line of the paragraph is the detail that I wanted. Like I said, I couldn't tell if the photo that I found had a reflecting pool surrounding it or if the photo just depicted a reflection from the glass windows. So I ended up making a phone call to the American Embassy in Beijing and tried to briefly tell the Chinese woman who answered what I wanted, and also told her that I was calling from the US and it was costing me a lot of money and I needed an answer right away. I didn't get an answer the first time I called. I could have given up, but I called back another time, and this time she switched me to a man who I can't exactly remember what he did, but I think it had something to do with people who wanted to settle there. And I asked him if there was a pool of water surrounding the embassy, and he said yes. And then I asked him another question to get further details, and he wouldn't answer. And he seemed suspicious, like he thought I might try to bomb the place or something. So I ended the call. I spent $50 on the calls to get that one detail. And to me, the money was well worth spent. And now to tell you a little bit about some spy stuff. The CIA recruited me in the early 70s, shortly after Watergate, during the Nixon administration, when most women were hired as administrative assistants. You can see they probably were hard up. But back then, the CIA recruited women like me from all 50 states. I worked with a lot of intelligent people, and it was a lot of fun. But after 5 years, I resigned when my CIA boss recruited me to work for him at a small company in Emeryville, California, which is across the bay from San Francisco. Among other things, our company researched and wrote country studies for multinational corporations. But since then, I have read numerous spy novels and memoirs and have done a ton of research on famous spies, tradecraft, and spy sites. During the pandemic, I read 15 of Danielle Silva's books, spy novels, and countless others. I was also a member of the Spyberry Facebook group, where I was exposed to famous spy authors such as Ian Fleming, John le Carré, and Len Deighton. I wanted to tell you, though, my book, I think, is unique because it is the only contemporary spy thriller that is written by an insider. There's a lot of people who write spy novels that that have never worked in intelligence, like Mick Herron, has the popular Apple TV series, The Slow Horses. He never worked in British intelligence. Neither did Paul Vittich or Robert Dugoni or Tess Gerritsen, and they've all written successful spy novels. Another one who's written one lately, there's a novel called Shanghai, which was written by Joseph Cannon. It takes place in pre-World War II. And again, he never worked in intelligence, but he's written quite a few spy novels. And now I want to talk about the motivation of my antagonist in the story, Yi Chen. You can get an idea of his motivation from knowing why in the world would someone betray their own country and spy for another government. The spy in my book was motivated by one or more of these things. Now you can Google almost anything, and the answer to that question is MICE, that stands for money, ideology, compromise, and ego. It's used in counterintelligence training to identify potential motivations for spying. Number one, money. People with access to sensitive information may be tempted to sell secrets for their money. Two examples of this are Robert Hansen, who was an FBI agent that sold secrets to the Russians, I think from 1979 to 2001. He's now dead, but he sold the secrets for 1.4 million. The other person is Aldrich Ames, who got $4.6 million from the Soviets. He was a CIA agent. And the second motivation is ideology. Some spies volunteer to work for an adversary because they shared the same beliefs. Cuba spies are often motivated by ideology. Ana Montez spied for Cuba for 17 years. She was high up in the Defense Intelligence Agency. And there's a great book I read called Queen of Cuba that details her spy journey. The third thing is compromise. Spies may be coerced into working for an adversary through blackmail or threats of force. And it said Russia often uses blackmail to coerce spies. The fourth one is ego. Spies may be motivated by a desire for recognition or to feel important. And other factors that may motivate spies includes revenge, education expenses for college or advanced degrees, medical help, elder care, recovering from a divorce, covering gambling debts. I won't give away my story, but it might help to know my antagonist, Yu Chen, seemed to be motivated partly by money, partly by ego, partly by revenge, and partly in order to receive medical help. However, there's a wild twist in my book in chapter 4 that I think you'll enjoy. So you might ask, how does the process of recruitment work? It's through a process that involves identifying potential targets, assessing their suitability, and making a pitch that, for example, might appeal to their ego. Blackmail is also sometimes used. Development of targets can take years and can be dangerous or risky. Sometimes a target contacts the intelligence service himself or herself. Targets are people who have access to sensitive information or might be useful in a support role. Many are in the space or aerospace industries. Number 2, identifying targets. Intelligence services use public information and social media to identify potential targets. For example, the Chinese have offered laptops, women, or educational stipends, and have also used odd LinkedIn requests to target individuals. Number 3, assessment. Intelligence services may assess targets' hobbies, career success, and marital status to find common ground with them. Number 4, screening and evaluating. Targets may be required to pass screening, testing, and interviews. They also may need to undergo security and medical evaluations. And Russian intelligence services often use illegals. They're called sleeper agents who operate abroad using false identities. They blend in by taking ordinary jobs, complete with backstories that allow them to operate undetected. They may use a variety of tactics to recruit spies, including appealing to personal vulnerabilities, exploiting existing grievances, or using blackmail to coerce individuals. And China's intelligence services, the MSS, doesn't operate like Russia's FSB or the CIA. Instead, they often use front companies and have spies embedded everywhere, in the music industry, the media, the arts, think tanks, and academia. Over the last 15 years, dozens of Americans, Chinese nationals, and Europeans have been arrested, charged, or convicted of economic or military espionage for China. Historically, the majority have been ethnic Chinese, including Chinese students who came to the US for college or advanced degrees, got hired at tech companies, and then returned to China with stolen trade secrets. More recently, China has targeted American citizens to collect sensitive military, intelligence, or economic information. One such recruitment began with a simple LinkedIn message. And if you want to find out more information, you can check out espionage facts on the website of the International Spy Museum, where a lot of this information came from. And now, before I open it up to any questions, I'd like to tell you that Auntie's Bookstore will give you a 15% discount for attending today. You just need to mention that when you order the book, and it'll take them about a week or so to get the book in stock. You can also order it from Amazon or Barnes & Noble, and also bookshop.org, which supports independent bookstores. So it's, it's nice to support them, and you can choose the bookstore you want to support at bookshop.org. And the other thing is, I'm also offering a free book to anyone who will write an honest review of it. Just put your email address in the chat. And I also offer a review exchange for authors where I'll read and review your book in exchange for you reading and reviewing mine. And now I'm going to open it up for any questions that anybody has.
That was wonderful, Joan. Thank you. Now you've given so much information to all the writers here that you've done all the work for them. Now they can go out and write their own spy novel and rely on what you've done. Thank you. Yeah, anybody that has questions, if you wish, go ahead and unmute yourselves at this point, because I pretty much have made sure everybody was muted. And thank you, Gail. Gail has said she's interested in the review business. Okay. And I'll share all of this with you and with Joan. I'll have it saved, and so I can send it to anybody. And Elena is trying to need to, do you know where your microphone is at the bottom?
Myself. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so John, you haven't been to China. Are you planning now that it's probably easier to get there, to go and kind of walk to those places that you have described in your book?
I probably won't. I would love, all the research I did on China, I would love to go to that country. What I don't like are crowds. So I think you have a lot of crowds in China. And I would love to go, but I really don't have the money, and that's why a lot, one thing that really helped me, I attended Thriller Fest during the pandemic virtually. And one of the founders of Thriller Fest, Gail Lenz, I don't know if she worked for the CIA, but she wrote a spy novel anyway. And there was an interview between her and someone else. And the other lady said she felt that you had to go to the country to do research. And Gail Lenz said, she disagreed. So there were two viewpoints. Gail Lenz said she didn't think you had to go to the country to do research. And so that gave me the impetus to try to find other sources, and the internet is wonderful. Now you can Google almost anything and, like I said, I went on TripAdvisors to find restaurants or something, to describe, and you can see the inside to try to describe it on your own. Or like the photo of the American Embassy in Beijing, and they had a lot of they had pictures, I could describe the buildings, and they had some sort of write-up, so that helped me. But I did a huge amount of researching, Googling, and yes, I would love to go to China sometime, but I just don't have the money to do that. But
I'll be happy to write a review, and you don't have to give me the book for free. I'll be happy to buy it and write a review.
oh, well, I'll do it in exchange for doing one of yours.
Okay, we can do that.
So which book would you like me to review of yours?
Oh, whichever. There are only two, so pick one.
Oh, okay. Okay. I'll do that.
I just finished editing a book, and so I'm kind of free. I'll be happy to read it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
I'm making a note so that if we'll make sure that you guys connect, if you don't already have each other's email. I'm gonna put I'll just write review. I know what it's about. Herb, go ahead.
Okay, a couple things. I have a comment on your research. Okay, now have you seen people looking through your windows lately? I was I on the fourth edition of one of my books I'm writing now. I did a little research, and I wanted to know about getting sucked through the generator turbines on dams on the Snake River. And it was really tough getting guys to talk to me. Oh no, yeah. Anyhow, okay, that was just, it took me forever to find out where the screens were and stuff. But I do know somebody, I know a headmistress at a school here in Sandpoint who was kind of undercover-ish. She went to China for quite a few years teaching in a school. So her husband could be used to be a minister, was an undercover missionary holding meetings and Bible classes in his house, so the government didn't find out about it. But they've actually went back and adopted 2 Chinese babies, over the years. And she's a headmistress right here in Sandpoint. In fact, she's planning on getting a bunch of her students into our writing contest.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
I mean, if you
Yvonne,
want to do about somebody who's actually been here, sort of undercover.
Well, Pearl Buck lived in China, and her book is so wonderful, The Good Earth. I would totally recommend it. It's just one of my favorite books. And I absolutely loved it. But I knew after reading it and doing my own research that my book would be different, so. And I didn't live there in China. I didn't have her experience, but it's a wonderful book.
Yvonne, you had a question?
Yeah, I haven't read your book yet, but you indicated that there's a lot based on DNA, which I find very fascinating. In fact, I found a half sister through DNA about 10 years ago. So since then, I've kind of launched into being very fascinated with the whole process. I guess my question is, when you were doing your research, Joan, did you find that there were times when you had to figure out what was conspiracy around DNA and what was factual? And how did you discern the difference if you did?
I didn't find anything conspiratorial, but I think a lot of people are hesitant to get like a DNA test because, somebody has that information about you, a data bank. And so that was a little bit concerning. But my friend went ahead and did it. He was a good sport. And so we both did a DNA test. And I found the DNA test just really interesting because I signed up for traits. My friend didn't, just got a basic DNA test, but I signed up for traits. And they ask you questions like, something about, do you drink coffee every day? And does it help you go to the bathroom or something? Strange kind of questions like that. And they have all these traits of people who have your DNA, and they can say, how many people have this trait? And I just found it really fascinating, so I didn't get into all the conspiracy stuff about it. But like I said, I have a sister-in-law that did a DNA test and found out that she was adopted at age 30. And that just, my character, I think, is age 30. And that just really was, worked out well in my plot. So.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to follow up on DNA testing in general. I got a test, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago, and it was my Christmas gift to myself, more than anything. And I'm the youngest of 7 children, and we're all Polish, and we were always told that we are 100% Polish on both sides. And I just thought, how can that be? There's got to be a drop of bad blood in there somewhere, right? And I also thought, I'm so different from all of my 6 siblings in almost every way. So I was telling everybody, I'm just gonna prove that I'm not related to any of you folks, But the funny thing is, it came back, and it came back as like 98.56 Slavic, Eastern European. So the funny thing was, it did come back as I am exactly what I've always told I was. And it kind of confirmed everything, we were ever, yes, grandparents and great grandparents, came from Eastern Europe, from Eastern European country, and they came over to the United States and found other Polish, people to marry, and they stayed within their clan and whatever. But I find it so fascinating, Joan, that you use that as a jumping off point for your book. What an interesting starting point. I really find that a very, very interesting way to get going, or just a germination point for your book, because there's just so many different ways that you can run with that. So I find that really interesting. I'm also a huge spy novel reader. I've read every John le Carré. I've read every Daniel Silva. I've read all of them. I've absolutely read all of them. So all
Well,
the,
this was
know all
unusual.
about him.
This was unusual for a spy novel to take the DNA thing, but
Yeah.
China collects economic data, a lot. Their spy agencies operate a lot different than the CIA or FSB, and so I found that kind of fascinating. And I think this is, my book is really about economic espionage, where I think that's a different take on it than most spy novels.
Yeah, Cold War
Yeah,
type.
yeah,
Yeah.
Cold War type or World War
Yeah.
II.
Yeah, nuclear secrets and whatever. But that's essentially what China's interested in, though, right?
Yeah.
Economic espionage. So I cannot wait to read it. I think it's going to be so much fun.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Joan Kop, I think you were going to.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm going to be excited to read it too, because I helped critique the book when it was being written. So I'm really looking forward to seeing it. And I was going to say, yeah, I definitely will go ahead and buy your book and give you a good review, because you helped me out with mine. But the thing I raised my hand for actually was the fact that I just love the thought that DNA can expose secrets that you think were hidden for
Yes.
decades,
Yes.
and have them come back. And somebody hit me on my DNA saying, I think I found my father. And she mentioned my husband, who would have been about 6 years old at the time. So it obviously wasn't him, but I said, but I think I know who it was, because my husband's Filipino, and that's why she had hit on, she figured, well, anyway. But it turned out, I think, to be a cousin of Carlos's that had gone to the States in like 1955 or something like that, so that he could study. And he probably has no idea that he fathered a child. It just, the ramifications that could have for the family would be pretty amazing. So DNA is a great thing to put in your plot, I think. All kinds of hidden things come out.
Although I have a DNA thing for your next sequel to this particular book. Everybody's going on about the whole COVID thing and how it was generated at a plant, and you could actually get into your next DNA thing and have the Chinese intelligence agency specifically targeting certain DNA parts in their, so it'll make certain races more susceptible to their next disease they're going to release. All the tinfoil hat people are going to love that.
Any other questions from folks?
How long did it take you to write from start to finish?
Well, it took probably a little over a year. And then I had it with, I had a literary agent. I have a literary agent that I was contracted with, and he submitted it to major publishers. And I waited another year. I already had the book designed and was going to go ahead and self-publish, but I met an agent at the Seattle conference and said, you know, he told me I probably pulled the trigger too fast, and he thought my story, you know, I thought my story was so timely that I needed to publish it right away. And he said, no, I think you could publish it, you know, in a couple years. And so that prompted me to try to find an agent. Then I found an agent, and he submitted it to major publishers, and they've had it for over a year. And then a friend of mine in Portland said, you know, I said, what would you do if you were me? You know, I said, I'm 70 years old and I have health issues, you know, and she said, if I were you, I would go ahead and publish it, give your agent a deadline, because, you know, I could have waited, you know, another half year and a year to get a major publisher, and then it would take them 2 more years to get the book out. And I didn't want to wait that long. So I decided to give my agent a deadline, and he didn't hear from the publisher. So I said, I'm going to go ahead and publish it. So, yeah. But that took, you know, a couple years to do that. Plus, I also, since I was a former CIA employee, I have to have it vetted by the CIA. And that took a couple months. You know, I forget how long it took, probably 6 months or less, but still that's, you know, time consuming. So,
Absolutely, yeah.
yeah.
That probably wouldn't
Exactly.
be the case for folks that haven't been employees, right? They're just writing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, people that have never worked for intelligence agencies, like Mick Herron, you know, he's got this successful series on Apple TV, and he never worked for intelligence. He doesn't have to have run it past the British intelligence service or anything, you know, but so.
Is there camaraderie of any sort between the different countries' agencies? I mean, you know, whether I suspect it would likely be along east-west lines, but or are they very competitive and non-cooperative?
Oh no, there's allies that we work with. Yeah, but some of the intelligence agencies, like there's this funny movie that was made. It's called Hopscotch. It's got Walter Matthau in it. It was years ago, but I absolutely love that movie. You know, and he meets this his Soviet counterpart, and it's really funny in that show. You know, but according to CIA case officers, they say that's the most realistic about how, yeah, hopscotch, that's what it is. And they say that's the most realistic about how intelligence agencies work.
Interesting. And of course, we're pretty sure that the James Bond stuff, while it might have underlying accuracy, I doubt that there's many agents running around in their white suits in the casinos, you know, pretending that they're not agents. No.
James Bond is totally fantasy. You know, I wrote a essay about, if anybody wants a copy, I'm happy to give it to them, but I got an honorable mention in Writer's Digest, but it was about the difference in spy novels. And I go through a lot of spy authors and tell what they've written, you know, famous ones and one now, and tell whether it's realistic, there's realistic or fantasy. And James Bond was totally fantasy. So is the Jason Bourne novels is totally fantasy. But
Except for the part that's true. Wink, wink. Any other thoughts or comments or whatever? This has been so much fun. I'm just excited. I've made so many notes here and things to look up later. And if anyone wishes to have a copy of the chat, you can always email me. Since you showed up here, I think everybody can, you've got my email address, right? So go ahead and ask and I'll just send it to you. It'll come in a kind of a squished text sort of format, but you'll make it out. It's got the website and Joan's 2 email addresses and also the bookshop website address. So we
Oh, Linda, I have something to say.
sure, Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, some years back, I was writing a novel that took place at United Nations in New York, and I'd never been to New York at all. And I looked online to get some info about the building, but I was really trying to find out some, basic info like do they have underground parking, or do they have like what's the lighting like out front? Some some questions like that. And so I just sent a few emails to like some of the people that work at the UN. I think they have a couple shops, so anyways, I get a call, woke me up in the morning because they got 3-hour difference, and it was the security people at the UN, and they were very serious with me about what my intentions are and why I want to know these things. And it woke me up. I did the best I could, but I didn't ask that person my question. I thought I'd just better fade away. But that definitely was a wake up call about stepping on toes and all the ramifications. Am I a terrorist? That's basically what they were saying. And I didn't have I don't think I had a website. So if they Googled my name back then, there wouldn't have been anything really showing up that I was indeed a writer. But anyways, I like to tell that story. And so that's all.
I've got a question. I think Joan and I probably both struggled with the same thing, but you've self-published and then you don't have the advantage of an agent running around marketing for you. And so I think you're getting an agent was a good thing. And I am thinking I might want to republish my book at some point. I have a lot of things I'd like to change about it. But how did you go about getting an agent?
Well, I contacted, I pitched some agents in Seattle and sent him my manuscript. And the one agent, he was out of LA, and I sent him my manuscript, and he finally told me that he took on too many people and he wasn't going to do justice to my book. So he suggested I go with someone else. And I had this agent who I met actually through a writing conference. I took a course on, I think it was writing synopsis or something from him. And for some reason, I wasn't able to get on the link for the course or anything. So I asked him for my money back. And then he offered a free phone call. So I talked to him and told him about my book and stuff and kind of forgot about him. But then when the other agent said he had too many people, then I contacted this other guy and I said, you know, he liked my manuscript, but he took on too many other authors and he couldn't do justice. And so this guy said, send me the manuscript. So I did. And he ended up having a friend, one of his authors that he published through was an expert on China. The guy had, I think, taught English over there and lived in China for a while. So he considered him an expert. So he had him read my book, and the guy gave me a blurb. And so since that guy liked it, you know, and my agent read my book, he liked it too, but he wondered, you know, how authentic it was. So he asked this friend of his who had lived in China, and the guy gave him the green light. So that's how he became my agent.
Wow. That's cool. That's a good story, Joan. Writers will be interested when they hear this. Those that aren't here, see the video. Well, we've got another 5 minutes or so left. I always give the alarm about now, just because sometimes people have other things they have to do and they fall in and forget to watch the clock. So, yeah.
I just want to thank everybody for coming. I really appreciate it. And also you, Linda, thank you for all the hard work you did putting this on. I really appreciate it. So,
Well, thank you for being willing to do it. You saved my life. She took this on in just, I don't know, what, 2 or 3 weeks, I think, beforehand. We were really kind of running because somebody else had a problem and couldn't make it. And Joan said, I will do it. And it's like, so thank you. I really appreciate it. You kind of saved my life there, gal. But everybody here, you've been wonderful. Again, you can get, he says, so proud of you, sister. This is Karen. So proud of you, sister. Can't wait to read your book. Congratulations on getting this exciting book out to the world. You enjoy. There you go,
thank you.
Karen. And yeah, well, some of you probably won't come back to see us in the future because you're not really interested in other writers. Why would you be? You're just interested in Joan. And we understand that. But we may have some things. So a couple of folks I think did sign up for the newsletter, and maybe they will show up at some point in the future. And now you can wonder, who were they? Anyway, and we're just happy that you came, and thank you. Hope you had fun. And anything that I can do to help you, just give me a holler and I will respond as quick as I can, okay? Yeah. Been great.
Thank you.
Thank you so
you.
much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. To meet all of you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Connie.
Thank you, Linda.
I'm just waiting for y'all to leave. I'm just not gonna throw you out. I don't like throwing people out, so. Brenda, you're still here.